All right, guys, so we were working on our midterm review. Now, my midterm review is just a little bit different from yours, to remind you, but it's asking you to perform the same tasks. So number 1 and 2, they're asking to convert between fractions and decimals. And while the fractions and decimals that I have are different than the ones on your review, they're still the same task. Okay. Number 3 was a little bit of a story problem, and numbers 4 and 5 involved division. Now, reminder, numbers 1 through 5, no calculators on 1 through 5. Okay. Number 4, I want to multiply 1 3/4 times 1 1/3. Now, the first problem with multiplying these two is that these are both mixed numbers. So, and before I can multiply, I need to make them both improper fractions. So last year you learned a trick that you call the check mark method, and that's what we're going to use here. What we do is 1 times 4 gives us 4, plus 3 gives us 7. Okay, and then the denominator from before, we just keep it. So it's 7/4. And I'm going to multiply that times, same thing, got to do the check mark method. So 1 times 3 is 3, plus 1 more gives me 4, still over 3. So I've got 7/4 times 4/3. Now to multiply fractions, if you remember, the trick is to just multiply straight across. So 7 times 4 gives us 28, 4 times 3 gives us 12. Now remember from before, from the previous video, we said you always want to reduce your fractions as much as possible. Well, 28 and 12 are both divisible by 4. So we'll divide them both by 4. 28 divided by 4 is 7, and 12 divided by 4 is 3. So I would have 7/3. Now, some of us might want to change this into a mixed number. The question might ask for a mixed number answer. So I would see how many times I can fit 3 into 7. 3 goes into 7 twice, with a remainder of 1. So I have 2 and 1/3. Now, depending on how the question is written, one or both of these might be the correct answer. If they want an improper fraction, you want to keep it 7/3. If they want a mixed number, you're going to change it to 2 and 1/3. Number 5 gets a little bit tricky because they ask us to divide 5/8 divided by 0.2. Well, the problem here is that I have a fraction and I have a decimal. And I have no scratch paper method to divide those two. So I either have to make everything fractions or I have to make everything decimals. Now, for me, I would probably take this 0.2, turn it into 2/10, reduce it down to 1/5, and then I can divide. I can do 5/8 divided by 1/5. Well, the way we divide fractions is we multiply by the reciprocal. So I would keep 5/8 and I would multiply that by 5/1. Multiply straight across and I have 25/8. Okay, now, as a mixed number, that's fine. But if I need to turn this into an as an improper fraction, that's fine. But if I need to make this a mixed number, I would see that 8 goes into 25 3 times with a remainder of 1. And I would have 3 and 1/8. Now the other option that I have is I can make everything a decimal. So I could do 5/8 divided by 0.2. Well, 5/8, if I turn that into a decimal, I would have to do 5 divided by 8. Okay, so if I do 5 divided by 8, 8 doesn't go into 5, so I would need to add a decimal and a couple of zeros. Well, 8 doesn't go into 5, so 0 up top. Don't forget your decimal. You need to bring that straight up. Now 8 doesn't go into 5, but 8 will go into 50. 8 goes into 50, let's see, that'll be 6 times, because 6 times 8 is 48. Subtract, and we get 2. 8 doesn't go into 2, so we'll bring down another 0. And 8 will go into 20 twice. 8 times 2 is 16. Subtract, and we'll get 4. And 8 doesn't go into 4, so I bring down another 0. 8 goes into 40 5 times, because 8 times 5 is 40. Subtract, and we get 0. So now I would need to do 5/8, which is 0.625 divided by 0.2. So if we change it all into decimals, now we're only halfway there. And that's fine. This method still works. Just remember right here, I need to move this decimal over 1 spot, which means I also need to move the decimal in my dividend over 1 spot, which means my quotient decimal is now right here. Now, I treat this 2, 0.2, I treat it like a regular integer 2. Well, 2 doesn't go into 0, but 2 will go into 6 3 times, because 3 times 6 is 6. Okay? Subtract, and we'll get 0. Bring down the 2. And 2 goes into 2 one time. 2 times 2 is 2. Subtract, we'll get 0. Bring down the 5. 2 goes into 5 twice. 2 times 2 is 4. Subtract, we get 1. Well, running out of space here. So here's my 1. I'll have to bring another 0. And 2 will go into that 10 5 times. 2 times 5 is 10. Subtract, we get 0. Which means that 3.125 would be my quotient. So we either have 3.125, 3 1/8, or 25/8. All three of those are equivalent. They all mean the exact same thing. And depending on how the question's worded, any one of them can be the correct answer. This one just says to divide them, which means any one of these three is correct. They're all acceptable. So either 3.125, 25/8, or 3 1/8. And any of those would be acceptable.